Happy Wine Wednesday, everybody. Oh, is there an echo? I thought I heard a little echo. Anyways, just a quick announcement, and then we'll jump right into chatting. We're trying this out, going to Instagram too, but I realized last week that basically it's taking the middle of the screen, excuse me. So if you're seeing us on Instagram, apologies for that. We're going to get it fixed, and in the meantime, you can at least listen in, right? And then, Dan, I do see that you are here, but I can't figure out why I can't let you in. It's weird. Oh, wait, here we go. Now I got you. Okay.
Oh,
And
cool.
we have Dan with us tonight. Yay. And I did ask Dan to come. He's so super busy, but I know last week we had some questions for him, and I have some questions for all of you this week. So, as I said, hope your Seahorse tanks, reef tanks, and lives are filled with lovely things this past week. Happy Wine Wednesday. I'm sipping on Chardonnay out of the mason jar. It's become a habit. Anyhow, welcome, Dan. How have you been?
Hanging tough.
Awesome. All right. Well, I know, Shira, what was the question that you had that you wanted to ask?
Well, yeah, the first question that I had, I know several of us, is Furan 2 has been banned by the FDA. They can no longer manufacture it or sell it. Do you have any suggestions for a comparable antibiotic that's a broad spectrum? And one of the advantages of Furan 2 is we could gut load live food with it as well.
Well, my next go-to would be kanamycin combined with triple sulfa. So
that was what I was thinking.
Most people will get Kanaplex and Sulfaplex. That's probably my first choice. The dosing that's given with kanamycin is recommended by NOGA is higher than what you're going to get with off-the-shelf stuff. But given the fact that the type of antibiotic it is in the same family as neomycin, I would probably stick to the lower dose and do a combination with the sulfaplex or triple sulfa because of the renal issues from high doses of that class of medication.
That was my concern.
Yeah. Short of kanamycin and neomycin, most of the other drugs either don't work as well in salt water or don't have as much efficiency. Unfortunately, the nitrofurans did a very good job, but you're going to see more medications banned from the industry coming up.
That's exactly what we've been talking about. Yeah.
By next summer, I don't expect any antibiotics to be available, over the counter.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Could just be like us here in Canada.
Yep.
We've been like that for a few years now.
Well, the problem is that, and I see it every day, especially during the COVID stuff, where people come into the farm store to buy, medicines that are for animals. They have no clue what they're doing. They have no clue what the proper dosing is and what forms to take. And, it's be one thing if they knew what they were doing, but they really don't. And, a lot of people are getting themselves in trouble by doing that.
Well, it's like using ivermectin for COVID.
Well, ivermectin, there's many studies that shows that it works, but, they come in and buy the paste. The paste is not evenly distributed, I don't know.
They're using something that's designed for cattle and things like that and trying to use it as a human supplement, human drug.
Well, some of that can work. A lot of human stuff, and right. I think Joe Rogan. Go ahead.
Well, Rogan took a prescriptive form of it that was in tablets that's designed for human use, and ivermectin comes in tablets for humans. It comes in a liquid that's injectable. It comes in a liquid that is a topical application, and it comes in a paste. It also comes in capsules and some other liquids that are designed for animals. And the problem is that when I ask people, people that'll open up to me, I get people walk in and say, I want penicillin. We sell penicillin that's injectable. And they say, well, I need an antibiotic for my dog, or I need an antibiotic for me. And they really don't know which antibiotic applies to what they're doing.
Yeah.
And somebody says, well, it worked last time. Well, sometimes you get better without the antibiotic. I mean, you don't know if that did or didn't. It's it's a major educational process on our end when we're dealing with people trying to understand what they're doing and what they're using the stuff for. I'm lucky because I have a little bit of a background, have more knowledge than the average Joe, but I'm not a pharmacist, and I certainly can't, prescribe anything.
Right.
But I can tell people when, this is flat out wrong.
Well, and good to as to because Cheryl, I wasn't saying you were wrong either, because that's kind of the same thing that as to what Dan was saying. If there's so many different forms of I can't say the word mectin, whatever it is,
Ivermectin.
then yeah, taking the wrong form could probably be dangerous or the wrong whatever, So definitely, if you're going to do that, go to the doctor. But
Well,
I
yeah,
find the
you
form
don't
is
know.
not as critical as much as it is the dosing. When
okay,
you get
Yeah,
the
exactly.
injectable form, which is a very high concentration, I had one customer that got some, took it, and he was sicker from the ivermectin than he was from COVID because he took too damn much.
Yeah.
geez,
The thing is, when you're dealing with something that's designed for cattle or horses, large hoof stock, things like that, there's no way we don't have the information to be able to determine what the human dose of that same product would be.
well, you guys figured out how to use the goat medicine on seahorses, so
Well, calculating the dosing is not so difficult if you know what the dosing is supposed to be. The problem is that people come in and said, well, so and so on the forum told me to take X amount, and
right.
they really have no clue if that's correct or not.
Right. Well, yeah, and we're not definitely not promoting doing anything like that on this channel. But Dan, why are all of these drugs being taken off the shelf? Why are we going to end up like Ray in Canada?
Because of what people are doing. They're going into
Oh,
places like
because
farm
okay,
stores.
okay,
They're ordering fish medication to take for
got it.
themselves.
And
And
this started before COVID.
no,
Right.
no, it's not because of COVID.
It has nothing to
COVID,
do with that.
COVID
The
is
biggest problem is
exacerbated.
the fact people are using it indiscriminately, and we're ended up with too much resistant bacteria.
Yeah,
Well,
Ray
You're
actually said
correct.
that it didn't start with COVID. But
Right.
go ahead.
the
It
thing is,
started long ago. But what I'll
yeah,
tell you, Ray, is that it's gotten worse because of COVID and gotten thrown further into the spotlight when people show up in the ER and they've taken something that when they tell the ER doctors, well, I took this. And, the most famous case is the people that took the chloroquine phosphate for fish, and it wasn't a pure form. They didn't take the right amount and they died.
Oh,
yeah,
Um, and that threw that into the spotlight. Chloroquine phosphate is a very safe drug taken properly. But, when you buy stuff off the shelf, something is designed to be added to water, not to be taken orally, there's complications that can happen. Chemically, the drug is the same, but the preparation and the labeling is different, and sometimes some forms of the animal medications may not be as pure as a human form.
I was going to say
There may be
some of them
other stuff added.
some of them have additives specifically to be able to use orally with hoof stock to get them to eat it.
Yep.
And the thing is, and people don't look at it that way. They also don't look at the difference in the dosages. They don't look at antibiotic resistance that they may be creating. It's a whole mess.
There's also the other thing that people that have never taken a certain antibiotic before, when they end up with a reaction.
yes.
Um, there's
My daughter
there's
can't do penicillin.
there's all types of potential issues, and if you go to the survival forums and look on there, they tell you to go to the feed stores and order the fish medications and all these different things to put in your survival kit. And again, unfortunately, there's many different antibiotics. There's not just one antibiotic.
Right.
And for that reason, that's why I'm such a fan of the Alimax and some of the other natural things that, obviously that's not going to be a very good oral product, but topically it works extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And real quick, guys, I just realized for anybody who's watching on Instagram or anyone new, I didn't really give you much of an intro. This is Wine Wednesday with the Whisperer. We join together every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern to chat. I jump in and chat with experts like Cheryl and Ray and Dan, who have been breeding and keeping seahorses forever. Holly is a newer breeder, but she is excellent. And we just discuss seahorse topics, reef topics, and we chat. So definitely join us every Wednesday. It's better on YouTube, but we'll fix it on Insta. And I should have said Cheryl Taylor, Ray, I don't even know your last name, Ray, and Holly, I'm not going to say yours either, and Dana Underwood of Seahorse Source, or who are with me today if you cannot see us. Okay, so then back to the Kanaplex or kanamycin as a substitute.
I have
Yeah.
that here. It looks like that.
Yep.
So the question is, Dan, would you suggest the same? Because I know with your instruction on the sheet we provided a while back that you don't. Isn't this the one that you use different dosing than the back? Would you do that with the Kanaplex too, or no?
I don't know what the dosing is on the label for the Kanaplex without looking it up, but I would do a 10-day course with 50% water changes each day. So my normal routine is to take the label, what the instructions are on the label, add that to a 10-gallon tank, each day do a 50% water change, and then replace what I took out meds, which would be 50%. So I would add back 50% of the medication each day. And I would still do it for 10 days.
And
lot of
Holly,
the-
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
A lot of the fish label medicines will tell you to do it dose 2-3 times or for 3 or to 5 days. And, you know, our experience has been in the past that many times that isn't quite enough and we have a reoccurrence and it's harder to treat. So it's better to go ahead and run the full 10 days and try to take care of what's going on. Generally speaking, when you're giving bath therapy, even oral therapy, it's still, you know, you got to expect 24 to 48 hours before you're going to see an improvement with symptoms when you start using antibiotics.
And Holly, I think the Kanaplex it says a 2-day by 2-day by 2-day, right?
It says 1 level measure for 5 gallons, repeat every 2 days until symptoms disappear, or a maximum of 3 doses.
Well, I'm going to say I'm going to follow Dan's instructions.
Yeah.
He's never gone wrong. But and that
Well, you know, it's
actually,
interesting.
that's
Does
not
it say on
specific
there
to
how much,
seahorses either.
how many milligrams are in there?
Yes, it says use 1 level measure, 125 milligrams. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, is that 125 milligrams
So
of medicine or 100?
Is
That's for
125 milligrams. So it's got in here, there's a tiny spoon
Right.
that you scoop it up with. But it's, I mean, I've used the Sulfaplex. I haven't used this one. It comes the same. The scoop, as you can see, it's kind of hard to get an accurate measurement with the scoop that's in it, honestly.
Oh, I like those scoops. I use the side of the container, and it seems I like them. But anyways,
I think the 125 milligrams is the weight of the whole powder, not just the medication.
probably.
Yeah.
I have to go back and somewhere I've got notes.
It's a half a gram. The container is a half a gram. 0.5
Well,
gram.
Once again, is that medicine or is that weight?
I'm betting it's weight.
It says
Like, what's
weight.
in it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So let
then,
me see if I have
in
notes
the
here.
1 level measure, it just has in parentheses 125 milligram.
I suspect 1 level measure would go into as just the 5-gallon tank to do the treatment in.
Well, here's an
Active
example.
ingredient, the kanamycin is 32%.
There you go.
Well, 32% would be 320 milligrams per gram. And to give you an idea, Neoplex, which is also made by Seachem, is with their directions, is 50 milligrams of neomycin. Nogo recommends 250 milligrams per liter. Kanamycin, he generally recommends 500 to 100 milligrams per liter, or
Wow.
380 milligrams per gallon.
Jeez.
So to do my calculations before, to follow Noga's recommendation, it would take 1 container of neomycin to do 1-day treatment.
Holy moly.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, having said that, I don't like that dosing because of what it does to the renal system. So
Right.
Exactly.
my recommendation is to follow the direction on there for the initial dose and then do a 50% water change, and then half the dose each day.
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons we stopped using neomycin was because of the renal problems.
Yes.
And we figured that out a long time ago.
Well, but that's what you said is smart, going between. And who did you say? Who were you quoting, Dan?
Robert Noga.
Okay. And so, going in between there, and does it matter too that these are very broad medications that are made for all fish? Like this isn't seahorse specific. So could that make a difference too, or no?
It's out of this book, Kelly.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I said Robert Noga, Edward Noga. I got him.
I always spell his last name wrong.
Well,
so the sulfaplex that you would do along with it, is it the same thing? You want to add it every day, but half as much?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah. And I'll try to add that to the typed up.
Now, what I'll tell you is that going back, we have to go back a long ways, and it doesn't seem that far to me, but it really is. Back in the early to mid 2000s, we found that our success in treating seahorses that were sick was much higher, much more effective by doing the 10-day protocol than it was to do the label protocol that you see on most of the fish medications. And that's why people like me recommend it, is because historically our experience has shown it's much more effective.
Gotcha.
Well, I suspect it has something to do too with their lack of gult.
Yeah.
And that's one factor. And so therefore, when they do pick up a bacterial infection, it's not going to be eradicated the same way as an organism that has basic natural defenses against pathogens, which seahorses don't have much of.
Right. Well, I'm glad that we at least have a substitute. Thank you so much for that, Dan. I've got 3 questions that are like more basic seahorse related, but Holly, didn't you have questions? I wanted to let you go first.
I do have some more about the antibiotics. So
okay.
the 10-day is just a minimum treatment, right? If you continue to treat longer, you don't have to do another full 10 days, right? It's however many days after that are okay, but you can stop anytime after the 10 days.
I would agree with that. And generally speaking, if I don't see improvement with the antibiotic within 5 days, most commonly I'm looking to switch to something else. So if you're seeing improvement, let's say, for example, that you're seeing improvement with the antibiotic you're using at the end of 10 days, but you feel like it's just not quite there yet. Tail rot's a good example. I've seen people with tail rot treat for up to 3 and 4 weeks with antibiotics.
Exactly. 21 days.
So sometimes carrying it out, but they were seeing improvements. If you're not seeing improvement, the antibiotic is not working.
But the one important thing we need to make sure we say too is that the big deal is don't stop before 10 days, right? Because then you're creating
potentially resistance, antibiotic resistance.
That's
now. So is each one 10 days though? So let's say you do the 10 days of Furan 2, and then you're going to switch to the Kanaplex and Sulfaplex. Is that 10 days for them?
I would.
So like another 10 days of them.
Yep.
Well, in your case, Holly, what you're working with is a male with have the male with the great big tail bubble, and we know from past experience tail bubbles are very, very slow to treat, presumably because of the reduced blood flow in the tail, but we don't know that for a fact. And so I typically, if I haven't had it happen very often, but when I've seen a tail bubble, they're going through 21 days.
Yeah. And right now I have 3 in the hospital with all different problems.
Such as?
But I believe they're all bacteria related. Other than, I don't know about the female, honestly. I really don't know about her because she doesn't have external symptoms, but she acts like Dandy always has, only more severe.
Well, say the symptoms, Holly, because Dan hasn't been with us for a while.
She can't swim right. Like she has poor motor skills.
She's ataxic.
Developed over time.
Okay, and the other ones?
And the other ones, I have a male with a white streak on his pouch.
Okay.
So looks bacterial to me, like a patch, like a white patch.
Okay.
And then I have a male with a tail bubble, and he was having trouble swimming. He still is, but he's not as floaty as he was. I've done some pouch, flushes for him, and I think that helped. I don't think he has air in his pouch now, but I think he's got an infection in his body. Kind of
This was
like
one
what happened to
that
Sandy.
somebody else owned, and Holly ended up getting the mail
Leave
back. And he already, when he left, he was fine. When he came back, he was already exhibiting these problems.
I wish we had the ability to do cultures and to
Oh, yeah.
define, because one of my concerns is that quite often I think, and it happens more often than people realize, is that we deal with mycobacteria, and mycobacteria is extremely difficult to treat properly, and mycobacteria can present in two forms. One, which is a very fast acting bacteria that takes out the animal immediately. And then you have the slow wasting type infection that just is persistent. It's a low level infection that progressively gets worse over time, and the immune system fights it and kind of holds it at bay. And a lot of times, I've seen this at one of the public aquariums where I was helping them with a seahorse that had it, and the paid vet for that uh, aquarium suggested just wiping out the whole display. And what we chose to do instead was to treat the animal, which we did, with the symptoms resolved, but they would periodically come back. And we did not add any more animals to the display. And over time, he slowly lost the seahorses, but it was over a period of 2 years. So, the immune system will fight mycobacterium, and depending upon which way it progresses, it can lead to, as I said, very fast or very slow persistent problems, and it typically will spread throughout the tank.
And mycobacteria is something that's dangerous to humans too, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, well, humans can get it,
So wear
and
gloves.
often it will present itself in different forms. You'll get some that you don't know what happened, the animal just overnight dropped. Then you have ones that develop granulomas, blisters. There's a variety of different symptoms that can present itself, so it's not easily recognizable. When people say, "Well, I know that's Vibrio," we have no clue what the animal has without getting a culture.
Yeah.
Right. I'm curious too about the white patch on the pouch, because one of my very first seahorses, before I met any of you guys, before I knew anything, years ago, it was the first male seahorse that I ever had that he had scraped his pouch, and so it had a white injury patch, and then he ended up getting pouch emphysema. I mean, it was obviously bacterial, but I just didn't know it at the time. But the other three seahorses in the tank never had a problem. Lived for years, bred for years. So
That's always possible, and that's why, number one, that as soon as you see an animal that appears to be sick, it should be quarantined. And the reason for that, as much as it
racist.
is to watch the animal, is to protect the other animals. And as a professional breeder, we do things a little bit different than what hobbyists do, because we have much more at risk. And typically, anytime I've got an animal that's sick, it's immediately gone.
Right.
We put it down, we move on, and it sucks when it's a prized, breeder, but we can't risk the spread. And I've actually very good at treating, but what do I do afterwards? When do I know it's safe? And
Yeah.
Right. You can't
it's
use that to breed anymore.
You
And
know,
and that's why we so appreciate that you do come and help all of us hobbyists with treatment, because even though you would handle it differently, you are very good at treatment, and we just appreciate you. I'm just thanking you
well,
again.
I've done my share of treating,
Right.
and I've actually, sometimes, I always talk about the one that lost the entire tail. I mean, that was an
Yes.
experiment, because it was such a bad case that I wanted to see if I could, in fact, save the animal. And I did. And the problem was, what do I do now? And I had no choice but to put him in what we call our misfit tank, which is animals that never to be sold or mixed with the others. And You know,
Right, but for anybody who doesn't watch the show, usually he's talking about a seahorse that had tail rot so bad he literally lost his tail. Wasn't it right under the pouch?
yep. He at night sat on the bottom, and the daytime he swam around the tank chasing all the girls.
That's so insane. I'm like, he can't hatch. That's nuts. Oh,
He lived for 2 years like that.
it's crazy. Okay, Holly, any others? I don't want to jump in with my questions or anything you want to talk about. Go ahead.
Well, I think that was it on the antibiotic stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
I would continue with that, with the kanamycin and the sulfaplex. And,
Mhm.
you know, there's some other things that I would love to experiment with that if I had the tank set up, I would love to play with. But, you know, I can't help but wonder if some of the things such as beta glucan, um, some of the other stuff that I've played with in the past that I haven't had time to do with seahorses, if they would have any effect at all and be helpful.
Yeah.
You know, molecular hydrogen's another one. You know, some people know that I've played with garlic, and you know, I've played with several herbs in the past, but I really wish we had. I wish I had the time and the setups to play with these.
Well, and I did see that Todd Gardner, I believe. If you're watching Todd, hey, on Instagram, he posted he's going back into breeding seahorses. I do believe. I was really excited to see that. So he'd be the type that would play with that stuff too. So maybe you know, we can
Well,
get
if you're
him.
breeding for a living, you're really more focused on the breeding.
Right.
You don't have as much time to play.
No,
You know?
I know, and I agree, but he's just so sciencey, you know. I don't know. Maybe we can bug him to try some stuff. But anyways, okay, well, if I've moved too quickly, you guys feel free to interrupt me, but I'm gonna jump into my questions real quick because Holly, that was what you wanted to know. You're good at this point?
Yeah. I was just I'm about to run out of the Furan too, but I've got a whole bunch of other antibiotics, so I was wondering what to use next. Or,
What else do you have?
Yeah.
I have got, besides Kanaplex and Sulfaplex, I've Metplex is the other one. And the Diamox I already used in the beginning with these guys.
Well, Diamox is not an antibiotic. Metroplex is a gram-positive antibiotic, and it generally doesn't work for most of your bacterial infections. In the seahorse world, it's used more as an antiparasitic than it is as an antibiotic.
Yeah, that's kind of what it says. Protozoan parasites.
Yeah.
So
it does say anaerobic bacterial diseases.
So Cheryl, Dan, Ray, your recommendations are that she just keep these guys in treatment for say 21 days. Anything on the
10 days, and then decide from there what to do next.
Right.
Well, they're past the 10 days now.
Yeah,
I'm over the 10 days at this point, but I'm gonna continue treating them. And you know, for a while, I was going to use up the Furan too, and then start, you know, something else because I don't have enough to go through another full treatment, so I might as well use up what I have. I figured.
Yep. And
because I only had 2 packets left, that's 4 days worth.
Okay. So at what point, like if 2 of them get better and 1 doesn't, or whatever, at what point do you? I mean, like you said, we can't know without culturing. At what point do you just figure out you can't treat it? You know, you can't help the animal. Is there a point or?
Well, it's a moving target, and it's not one I can sit here and define for each person. You know my stance. If it was me, what I would do. But if it's a prized, you know, it's a different story when it's the only animal. If you've got 2 or 3 seahorses, that's all you have.
Yep.
You know, it's a different ball game trying to do something. And, you know, when I talk to customers, I tell them as long as you're willing to go through the motions and do everything and the animal's not suffering,
right,
you know, then I have no qualms with them continuing treatment as long as they like. On the other hand, if the animal is deteriorating and it's clearly uncomfortable, The
Right.
more humane thing to do is to end it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have any of you here or in the comments, have you ever had a seahorse, male seahorse that had pouch emphysema, that you did pouch flushes, and as Ray always recommends, no, I'm sorry, Ray recommends the pouch flush at the end of removing
Yeah.
bubbles. But have any of you ever had a seahorse not have it again or
Yes.
get better, so to speak? You have? Okay.
Yes.
I
Many
have two.
times.
I've had one other that, man, he just kept getting it over and over, and I never figured out why.
You
But
know,
the
it's
thing
funny
is,
because when I first discovered that sometimes relaxing the animal will work for pouch emphysema was by accident, because my sister and I had a CUDA that was repeatedly getting pouch emphysema, and we were able to, get the air out, but the next day it'd be the same thing. And this went on for a couple of weeks, and finally we just said, that's it. We're going to put the animal down. So we put it in the water. We added the anesthetic, and all of a sudden, spontaneous release the air. And so
He's
we
stressed.
immediately revived the animal,
Yeah.
using a syringe and water, and put it back in the tank, and it never had pouch emphysema again.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes I got a young seahorse, young Combs, a number of years ago from someone else. And this little guy, every time I turned around, he was getting PE. The only seahorse in the entire house that was having a problem. And I finally did a couple of pouch flushes on him with an antibiotic flush. Guess who cleared up and it never came back?
Wow. You just
Well,
have
I've
some
had
really-
customers who've, in the process of walking them through how to do a pouch evacuation, tell me they could not open the pouch at all.
I
And
heard that too.
when that happens, that's when the anesthetic comes into play, where
Yeah.
you relax it. It's literally a case of the muscles cramping so much they can't open it.
Yeah, I think Ray had a problem with a male that did that, if I recall correctly. That you were having trouble getting air out at one point. This is going back several years ago.
I'm trying to think of which specific one you're thinking of. Like it's not like I just had one. But now I've only got one male left, and talking about pouch emphysema, this ab years ago, very frequently I was having to flush the pouch,
Mm.
and I don't remember just what happened, but I just left it. I think I was just fed up with it, and I just left it. And a couple days later, it was gone.
I've seen that too.
Now, about once every 2-3 months, he gets it again, and he's floating away. I just leave him, and a few days later, he's okay again.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I
We-
told the story before, but I had this a rectus hybrid that just kept having problems, like you're saying, and I traded him, and it kept back and forth, and I finally put him in. I mean, I was planning on probably letting him go, and not as drastic as Dan's situation, but I just had him in his own tank, and I wasn't, I was just kind of slowly figuring out what I was going to do with him, and all of a sudden he was better and never got sick again. I couldn't believe it. Never had anything, and I didn't do anything to him. It was so crazy.
We've experimented before doing that, and generally what we found was if the animal is not overly stressed and will feed from the surface,
Mm.
then we can let them alone. And I've seen them take 4 or 5 weeks for it to resolve itself, and it would. But if the animal is stressed and not eating, you have no choice but to do an evacuation, or you're going to lose the animal.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got crazy
Yeah.
male seahorses who are like, I don't care, give me that food, and then let them
Now,
alone. For sure.
What's really important for people, what's really important for people to understand is that pouch emphysema, by and large, is preventable. Despite all the seahorses that we had, it was extremely rare for us to see it. And the key to that is good, clean water, getting the organics kept down low in the tank. And that, of course, comes in play with flow, size of the tank, and filtration, skimmer, and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
were one of my
With this
questions is
particular
regarding.
ad, It's
Well, one of the things I
weird
do.
in that
Wait, hold on, guys. Ray first. Go, Ray.
I haven't had any poachy with this one for a while now, and two things have happened. First of all, I took it because it was down to just this one pair. I took them out of the 90 and put them in a 40, and it has a 20-gallon sump. The other thing that happened is the Seahorse developed a pinch body just above where the pouch is. It's sunk all in, and yet he eats more than the female, and the female's so damn fat you'd think she was gravid. But why the pinching, I don't know, and it seems to be a little bit worse now than it was a month ago. It's either that or my imagination's working that way, but I have a feeling I might be going to lose it. It's just something happening slow. But they'll only be, next month, they'll be 6 years old. But
And I think he's asked you before, Dan. You don't know about the pinch thing, right? Did we talk with you about it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we didn't have. There's not a clear-cut answer.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Well, I'm rooting for you, and I'm just glad that he's still happy. Okay, Cheryl, you were trying
I
to
was just
speak.
saying, one of the things I've found, particularly with the males, where it's virtually impossible to open their pouch because they're so inflated. I've found that if I can get a very small catheter in there, inject some clean water into the pouch, they will have a contraction and blow everything out of their pouch, quite frankly. And I've been shot in the face by more than one male.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've been doing that with thing too. When I do when I add the fresh medication every day, I try to flush his pouch with it, and just squirt a little bit in there. And he's
about getting shot in the
a
face.
lot better, but they're all I mean, they all have a lot wrong with them, but they are eating, they have voracious appetites, and they're trying to breed in there, all of them.
If they're happy.
And I think it's going different because, like I said, there's 3 of them together instead of just one this time. And I think their mental health is better, possibly because of that.
And now we're talking
Andy, when
mental
he
health.
was in the hospital, he would not eat. But all these guys are eating. And when Thing 2 was in quarantine, he wouldn't eat. He'd pick at a little bit of food, but now he's in the same place he was in quarantine with 2 other seahorses, and they're acting like, hey, this is cool, that we're all right with this situation. So
they don't like being alone.
The thing is, his tail bubble may have been a sting. You don't know what else.
It's huge. It's gotten bigger. It is huge. Like, it's a huge pimple on his tail now. And
he's using his tail better.
It's getting bigger while he's in treatment?
Yeah, it has. His body got better, but his tail got worse. I don't know if it's working its way out of him, or he's not floating anymore. He's swimming around. He's a little bit buoyant, but I don't think it's from air in his pouch. I think it's from his
internal.
body.
Yeah. It's internal breathing.
But he's able to maneuver himself and eat and do the mating dance. So
if they're happy, they're happy.
I'm just
I do want to say too that Dan has an excellent write-up about pouch emphysema and GVD that is in Seahorse Sources group on Facebook. I've linked it here before. I will try to do that when we're done. I'll put it in the comments on the YouTube video. I usually don't get to the Facebook version, but just go to the YouTube video if you want that link for that, or go to Seahorse Sources group to get that information. And still working on the website, but once that's done, all that stuff will be there too. Okay, well, I have a couple of questions. One is about flow, one's about a pouch, and one's about a pump. So
I didn't do it.
Right. So the first question, kind of easing into it, kind of related, not really, but to the pouch stuff. Have you, should a person, not me or anything, worry? I have 2 Ocean Rider yellow seahorses that it's so funny to watch it's so funny to watch seahorses in their first mating dance, because these idiots could not figure out where the hole was. Okay. and they danced for days. And I literally messaged Chris Carey and I was like, it's been so long since I had seahorses providing me fry that I didn't remember it taking this long. And he was like, no, that's normal. And then I was like, yeah, but watch this male. So the first symptom is, and I'm probably over worrying, you guys know I do, but he started like jerking and he's flushing all the time. I thought maybe he was already pregnant and he started trying to spit out the first batch or something, because he was acting like he was in labor, like doing the jerks and flushing constantly. And Chris said that was normal, but am I just out of touch? Is that normal?
Especially
Well-
in young males.
I've
Well-
seen mine do that when they're just figuring out they have a pouch and they start doing stuff with it. They're
Woohoo, look at that.
PE can stand for more than pouch emphysema.
Oh boy.
There's other things that happen prematurely.
Okay.
Okay. No, that can be normal. What I would probably say is take a look at how the flow is in the tank, and maybe if you're really concerned, maybe lower the flow during the mating time and see
Okay.
if that helps. Sometimes if there's a funky flow, that can interfere with them unless they figure it out. It really depends upon the individual tank setup. Most of the time, they will eventually figure things out. And if they don't, the way we did it, we just swapped out different ones in there and see what happens.
Yep. Well, not everybody has all those seahorses, but that's why I can't wait for babies. But go ahead, Cheryl.
One of the things that happened with my young pair they were dancing for over 3 days. Problem was, they did finally complete an egg transfer yesterday. But the problem was I had an open-ended airline. She kept going over near the air, and then he'd come in, inflate his pouch, and then she'd blow to the top of the air bubbles.
Yep. Well, that's funny. That's really
Turn
funny
down the
timing.
airflow.
Sorry. That's really funny timing, Cheryl, because my guys finally did their egg transfer last night too. I'm sure, because she's skinny. It's an all-in-one, so it shouldn't be hard to find eggs, and I can't find any eggs. And his pouch is no longer flushing, and it looks fatter. So yay. But the question about his pouch, again, probably overreacting. But one thing I noticed as he was turning bright white, as they do, especially in the pouch area, as they're flushing and showing off for the female, is that he had dark marks on his pouch. And now that he has stopped being this bright white color while they were courting, I can still see dark marks on the pouch. Is that just because it was stretched, or?
That could be
Nothing?
individual traits with the animal,
Okay.
which is most likely. But
Yeah.
when you only have one, you don't know what's normal, what's not.
Right.
And being that it's new to you in terms of all of this, I would keep an eye, but I wouldn't get overly concerned.
Okay, and then the next question that's the most important involves flow and pump. So in this all-in-one, where all this breeding's going on, and now I've got a pregnant male. I've had trouble from the beginning. I've said that. It could just be me. I'm used to pump. I'm used to sumps. I like sumps. But I've told you guys know, but just for the audience, it's got a sock on one end with aqua chart in it, in the sock. Then it's got a homemade K1 media reactor. Then the center portion has 2 pumps. And then I've got skimmer and then UV sterilizer, right? So the 2 pumps I've realized after, some looking things up, that they're only rated 250 gallons per hour each, right? So total of 500 gallons per hour, and it's a 40-gallon all-in-one. Now the front space is so we get into the question of, yes, you want to have 1 to 2 or 15 to 20% turnover. I'm saying it wrong, but if the space they're in is smaller, that's still the case. And I ended up adding, because I could tell it wasn't enough flow, so I ended up adding an internal filter with a spray bar, and everything seemed great. As Dan suggested, if I ever have trouble, I also have a canister that I'll throw on it that's covered and all of that. All right. So getting to the point. Well, actually, first the question. It doesn't matter the space that they're in when we're talking flow.
Yes.
Like, go ahead.
It
Okay,
does.
yeah.
Go ahead, Cheryl. Go ahead.
Dan.
I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in a smaller tank, you still want to do 10 to 20 times turnover rate per hour. So you want to be running some flow. But if you aquascape it with different objects in front of the returns, you can use a much higher flow without knocking the seahorses around. And that's one alternative to maintaining a higher flow and still giving them plenty of mobility. And seahorses being seahorses, if there's an airline in there, they'll find a way to get into the airline.
Right. And Dan, any thoughts from you?
Well, the challenge is the smaller the tank, and when you got a pre-designed tank like that, it creates limitations, and it can be more of a challenge to get the desired flow rate, or should I say turnover rate in the tank. And I like to think in terms of turnover, not flow. I want the volume of water turned over 10 to 20 times per hour. And when you're dealing with a small tank with preset configuration, that puts a limitation on how you can set it up and what you can do with it. And it's one of the limitations with the all-in-ones you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And that was the next question, because what happened was you were busy. You haven't been with us for a few weeks, and Cheryl helped me, and Ray and Holly helped me last week figure out that the reason that I was having trouble with this pump continuing to stop working and acting funky is because I had lost one of the little black cap pieces inside the pump. And so it was rattling, making bubbles, all this crap.
Basically, she the pumps always have the little either nylon or rubber end pieces.
Like an impeller cover
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
she lost one of hers, so it was basically metal on plastic on one of the pumps.
So anyways, I bought another pump and I thought, well, this is my opportunity. I should have had pumps back up, as Dan suggested a while ago, but I didn't. And so I did order and got in a pump that was rated. It can go up to, it's like, I think it's like 400 to 1,000 gallons per hour or something, right? And it's just adjusted. I didn't get the expensive DC one that I want for financial reasons. Anyways, but I just got a cheap one that's adjustable on the pump, right?
Okay.
So I put it in. I'm sorry, I know it's getting late. I'll hurry up. So I put it in, and the first problem that occurred is that it doesn't. Okay, the way an all-in-one is set up, you've got the front of the tank here, the back of the tank here, right? And then there's this little hole, right? And then the pumps, or sorry if I'm doing it wrong, pumps in the back, but it has this little plastic tubing that goes out and then down to the pump, right? And then on the other side, to help me with flow, as Cheryl suggested a long time ago, I have the PVC, what are they called? Lock arm, whatever, lock line.
The turn nozzle.
Right. So the first problem that I encountered is because of the shape and size of this new pump, it doesn't reach the ground, the bottom of the tank when it's, I plug it into the hole and the plastic piece isn't long enough. Is that a problem?
Not necessarily, as long as it's not vibrating.
Yeah. As long as you don't let it run dry, you should be okay. The other alternative would simply be get some flexible tubing and attach it to either end and extend the pump down further down.
Right. Well, what I did
Yeah,
try is
we
to
had
get
that
it.
issue with my grow out tank when, once, after the first tank broke and I got the new grow out tank, it was taller. So the plumbing on the return wasn't quite long enough. So the pump was dangling in the sump. But I just
you
had
no idea how much plumbing I
water
had.
in the sump so it would stay underwater until we got the additional vinyl tubing to add to make it longer.
But it didn't
And
cause
it
any
worked.
problems. But it
No, as
No,
long
you
as it's
just
not
have to
vibrating.
stays underwater or shaking stuff up.
Well, and Dan, your vibration comment might be, here's what, when I have it just hanging there, that side only is spitting bubbles constantly. I know you've told me that that's not going to cause pouch emphysema. It's nothing to worry about, but I feel overreactor, but I feel like it stresses the seahorses, and I just don't stinking like it. But it's
Okay.
spitting these tiny bubbles constantly, and I don't know if it's because it's vibrating or it's not long enough.
If it's
Or
spitting
maybe,
bubbles, it's getting air somehow.
so maybe it's
It's probably too high in the water. You need to submerge it more, I bet.
Either that or your plastic tubing is not absolutely tight and it's sucking in air.
That's what I
Yeah.
think it is, Cheryl,
Yeah.
because that was what was wrong with the last pump. Like I know we figured out I had a black cap missing, but bottom line is that's what was pissing me off is all these stupid bubbles. So would you guys like I don't even know. I'm sure I could find it at Lowe's, but would you just buy another piece of plastic tubing and replace
Well,
Yeah.
let me ask.
Yeah.
Well, hold on,
I had
hold
to
on.
do
Let's
that.
back up. Let's
Okay.
back up.
it? Okay.
Water goes into your sump in the back, right?
Yes.
What does it do before it gets to the pump?
And that's good question. So on the side that I always end up having problems in, it goes into a sock. And I'll tell you this much too, because I know where you're going. If I look from the side of the tank, I can see the sock sits in this black piece that like fits into the hole, into the compartment. But I can see where there's bubbles, like because it's trying to, the water's. So we're going to get to this question about flow being too high because it seems like bubbles are happening because the fit's not perfect or it's trying to come up from underneath or something. So I do notice bubbles there, but then it goes through my K1 media reactor. And I've made a point of making sure that is pointed the other direction so that that's not overflowing into the pumps. But yeah, it's just
It sounds to me like before the water gets to the pump, you're getting air in the water.
Yeah.
How? Well, it does because it's literally going through this thing and going into the sock in the air. So I'm just screwed.
Right. But what I'm saying is the flow rate is pulling the bubbles towards the pump, and the pump is simply chopping them up and getting them out. So
Is there any fix?
well, yeah, there's a fix, but it's got to be creative based upon your particular setup. One of the fixes is to slow down the flow, obviously.
Yeah.
Give the bubbles time to reach the surface. Your K1 media, how is that being churned? Is that with an airline or with a pump?
Airline.
Okay. As an experiment, pull the airline and see what happens if you're still blowing bubbles.
Yeah.
Okay. I will.
I
I will do that, and I will experiment with the sock too because that keeps getting in my head too. Is I think it's got something to do with the placement. Like I'll pull the sock just to see if the bubble stop. I'll do that, and I'll let you guys know
The
next
thing
week.
is, bubbles shouldn't be getting out of a filter sock, even if they're entering in filter socks. They should be broken up.
What are you using
Under it,
What are you using for your reactor?
a 1 liter bottle.
Okay. Where's your holes on the 1 liter bottle for your water escaping?
Okay, remember I had the trouble because it ended up too tall. So maybe that's it. Oh my gosh, I think I had made it with holes on the top, and then it was too tall. And you were like, well, you don't have to toss it, just put holes in the side so it's under the water. And that's what I did. Could that be it? Letting air in?
It could be, but what my suggestion might be is that be a little bit more creative here in that where does the water enter the bottle?
The bottom.
Okay. So up from the bottom, before you get to the K1 media, put a bunch of holes.
Yeah.
Well, there already is because it was so tall. Basically,
Yeah, but on the neck of the bottle is you have the shape of the bottle where you have the opening, and then it goes up like a cone, and then it goes straight.
Yes.
Yeah.
So where the neck of the bottle is, put the holes there.
Okay.
And what'll happen is the airline is going to churn the water. But if it's pulling water in, water is going to be going out. And that way your holes are much lower and you'll have a place for the bubbles to escape and not be sucked into the pump.
Okay, I'll do that too. And that won't stop it from churning though, right?
No, it shouldn't.
Okay.
Everything else would remain the same. It's just a different, place for the water to come in and go out.
I will try all 3 of these suggestions. Thank you. Because I do believe you guys that it doesn't like hurt them, but I feel like they don't like it and I don't like it. So I'll try all 3 of those. Huh?
That could be.
Yeah. And so next thing is with the pump the new pump that's adjustable, once I get new plastic tubing and get it to the bottom of the tank. The other thing is, I don't think, as you were saying earlier, Dan, when you're using an all-in-one that has specific parameters and setup, when I try to turn it all the way up, it's a dang mess. The bubbles are crazy. So you just can't, because it starts pushing things too fast in the system that's designed to go at 500 gallons per hour, right? So I'm screwed. I got to leave it.
Well, you talking about the air bubbles causing the problem, or just when the pumps are turned up, the flow is too much for that area?
I don't think it's too much for the area. I think it's too much going back into the sump. Like it's just
Right.
designed to where
Right.
like it's hitting the thing and it's just too much.
Yeah.
Or am I wrong?
No, think of it, the car mechanics would tell you, if your intake on the engine is too small, you can only get so much air into the engine. It can only go so fast. And the problem is that where the water comes in and as it goes through there, it's too confined of a space. You can't get enough flow through there properly for it to do its job.
Yeah.
So should I just turn it down? I mean, I
You
want
may
more
have
smaller
to.
things.
You may have to.
Yeah. What you
Just
might be
add
able to
some-
do as an alternative would be to turn down your circulation pump for your filtration and then add in an adjustable power head or wave maker
Right.
that would increase the flow without creating your bubble problem.
Well, I have an internal filter that's like the little spray bar deal for smaller tanks, and I've got carbon and aquachar in there, and that helps. I just always worry it's not enough flow, because I know how important that is. And they seemed, when I had to go like a day over a week in doing water changes, I just felt like they were very unhappy that day. And I started thinking organics, and maybe I should do bigger water changes or something, because organics are building up because the flow's lower, correct? Period. Right?
If it was me, I'd pop a hole in the back and have a sump.
Right. I know.
Thank you.
Come drill it for me. Okay, last
My
question.
smallest tank is 58 gallons, and my smallest sump is 29 gallons.
Well, this whole entire experiment was to try to help people that want to keep seahorses but want to do a smaller tank.
No, I
I'm sorry
understand.
that I'm disappointing all of you.
My life is so much
Hey, I
easier
have some
now.
questions on the same topic. Is your third question on that same topic, or can I jump
No,
in
the
if
third
not?
question is about the tank bugs. So go ahead.
Okay, so can I, Jen?
Yeah,
Speaking of flow, because I want to run this by Dan since I haven't seen you in a while.
You got Dan, we're all like, give me Dan.
Dan,
So-
everything's cooking your brain because you haven't been around for a few weeks.
So
Busy.
anyway, what you missed out on was my grow out tank burst a seam, the acrylic tank. I had to replace it with a 75-gallon glass tank. And I
Okay.
had to replumb the sump to this new tank, but it did not have a built-in overflow box like my old one did. So what I found was an overflow box online that was only 600 gallons per hour, it said, which I determined was not enough for that size of tank. I figured around 1,200 might be right. So from Australia suggested I get 2 overflow boxes, and that would double the outflow to 1,200 gallons per hour. Is that true, or is it 600 gallons per hour no matter what? Does adding anher overflow box double the outflow, or?
Yes.
There's also
Okay, that'd be working.
Doubles the
So-
capability of the outflow.
Yeah. You can get overflow boxes that are rated for over 1,200 also, but they have 2 U-tubes and
Right.
separate chambers.
Yeah,
on each.
I didn't find any, so I found these, and we plumbed them in, and it turned out I have an adjustable pump. It does 8,000 liters an hour. It's a Jabeo, this one right here.
Yeah.
See if I can get it faced right with the
It's
camera.
a
with
DC pump.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's good. I mean, it's over what I need for this tank, actually. So I have the pump is on the lowest setting right now, which is what it was on before. So I'm thinking it's probably getting enough flow. Do you think that's 1,200 gallons per hour if the two overflow boxes are both working well? How do
Without,
you tell?
it's hard
I
for me
don't
to say,
measure it.
but yeah, one way to measure it is to get something in the sump to catch the water and see how fast it fills up, and then multiply it out. So, for example, if you had a gallon pitcher, you could put a pitcher underneath it where the water enters the sump, time it
Uh-huh.
on how quick it fills up, then multiply that out and see what the numbers are. It
Gotcha.
won't
I
be
was
exact, but
wondering
it'll be
how to
close.
figure it out. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
the problem you have is that most of your overflow boxes use a U-tube of some sort, and the diameter of the U-tube is going to dictate how much flow you can have. And the way to increase that
Mine
is if
does not.
Yeah, hers do not have YouTubes. Hers are patterned. I forget what they call them.
You gotta siphon it. You gotta suck the air till the water comes up and then seal it off. I don't know what it's siphoned
right. So it's
somehow.
a flat box design.
Yeah.
Yes.
So regardless of whether it's a tube or a flat box, you can only have so much water go through such a certain size opening. And unless you pressurize it, it's only going to get so much. So the way to work around that is either increase the size of the box or add another. And each box that you add will increase by X amount. If that box is rated at 600 gallons an hour, a second box will make it 12, the third box will make it 18.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, makes sense.
And
If
the
you
thing
look
is,
at your overflows, the overflows on most of your tanks today are designed in that they'll typically have like a 1-inch bulkhead where the bottom of the tube is 1 inch, but if you'll notice, the
Yes.
top of it's much wider. And the reason for that is they're using hydrodynamic, or however you say it, pressure. that
hydro
forces-
pressure.
Yeah, it's using water pressure to increase the flow rate by doing it that way. You can do that going down,
Gotcha.
but you can't do that top going over the tank without a pump.
Or you're going to end up water on the floor.
Yeah. So Scott put in the Y piece. I got the Y piece from eBay. Finally found one. It was about impossible to find. So we have both of the overflow boxes. They each have a vinyl tube that I was jamming into one filter sock. So we found a Y piece finally that fits. So we
Has it
have
helped?
now two tubes coming into one. Oh yeah, it's awesome. And the filter sock is so easy to change now.
Good.
You're not having any problem with slowing the outflow on that?
No, it's doing great. Well, because he was able to cut the vinyl tubing shorter to fit into the Y, so now it's not as bendy. There's one that comes from farther away that has a bend in it, but so far it's not really interfering with the flow.
It was my only concern with the Y is you're going to build up a certain amount of water pressure where the two points come together to one. And if it ever plugs up, you've got a problem.
Yeah, so this is the piece.
Yeah. And see, that's a good size. That's a decent size opening.
And so it's 1 inch outer. So my vinyl tubing actually is fitting over this.
Oh, and what's that? Is it all three prongs 1 inch?
Yes. Yeah, so we've got the two coming in, and then this one, I have the black plastic piece from, that goes into the filter sock now. So we got it all to where it's flowing smoothly. And it took a while getting used to the overflow boxes because they're kind of sensitive to like touch. And so, like if it's not jammed totally against the back of the tank, it's going to be off. Or you have to run your finger along the edge of the water to get it to flow down sometimes. Or for a while, I had one of my check valves, we figured out like the rubber ring inside wasn't good or something. So I had to replace that because it wasn't sealing tight enough, after I did the siphon to get it flowing, it would leak air inside of it.
Guess
Yeah.
where all my overflow, hang on back overflow boxes are right now?
In the garage.
No, on my front porch,
I was going to say, not in your tank.
not in my tanks.
I've drilled all my tanks. I got rid of all the overflows. I got tired of the
I
problem.
could see why. I didn't have
need
that
you to
option.
I need you to come drill my all-in-one. No, and guys, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to figure this all-in-one out for you because, I know there are many people that want to keep seahorses in a smaller tank. So I'm going to figure out the hows and whys. And I mean, the seahorses are still doing well. I just over worry, which is what you want to figure this all out. So sorry, Holly, I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you have any more flow questions or can I get, I know we got to let Dan go by 10 at the latest.
I did notice, I added a power head, but I noticed one thing that it does is it causes the water to fill the sump faster. Like it goes down the overflow boxes faster, which would mean every time I use it, I have to adjust the speed of the pump. So I stopped using for that reason because it would just be a pain. I'd be adjusting the speed of the pump every time I used it. Because I don't use the power head 24/7. I run it sometimes and unplug it. So I just stopped using it.
Well, I like having a wave maker or a power head in a tank. As long as you can adjust the flow, because what it's doing is it's going to blow up. In my case, it blows most of the detritus right down the filtration system. And what doesn't make it into the sump gets collected in one little corner, and I can go. And I could just.
Well, I had the wave makers first, and I didn't like them because I had to cover them, and
Right.
I didn't use the egg crate. I used like a media bag that zipped around it, and it got full of algae.
Yep.
And like the power head, I didn't run it all the time. I'd have it on, I'd turn it off. And the power head that I found that I really like, it's got an air line so I can make bubbles, to more oxygenate the tank. And the seahorses were loving it.
Oh yeah,
And
I'm sure.
because it was really simple. But once I got the new overflow boxes, anything that I change about the flow in the tank,
It's been
it's
increased
going to
going down
change
the
the
drain.
flow of the overflow boxes, and I have to adjust accordingly. So I'd just be adjusting everything like all the time to compensate. And I don't really have the time to deal with that, frankly. So
Well, I
might
will
throw
say,
it in the sump, though, just to add air, to my sump for oxygen.
yeah. And I will say, I personally absolutely love the Javeo wave makers because, and I agree with Holly, they're a pain to cover, and you do have to cover them with seahorses. Not cover them with seahorses. Cover them if you're keeping seahorses. That's what I meant.
I was wondering.
But I personally use mesh netting, or am I saying it right? The
mesh.
plastic quilting things, and it is a pain. I have to replace it often or clean it really well often. And once it gets algae, it's a pain in the boudoir for sure. But I still love them because they have feed options, and in a bigger tank, they just you can make. I like the ice caps too, where it moves and the flow moves, and I just love that. But
that's cool though. Mine weren't adjustable. I think that makes a difference.
Kelly, did you see my pump boxes?
Hang on, I want to see. Can you guys see what I'm pointing out now?
Yep.
Okay, so this thing, if you have is it still showing you guys or no?
The top fin internal filter?
Yes, that is what I have filled with carbon and aquachar in my 40-gallon all-in-one. And if you can see the spray bar, I don't know if my arrow's in the right place because I'm on two pages,
I can see it.
Okay, so you can. What I've done personally is in the all-in-one. I'll stop sharing now. But in the all-in-one, in the all-in-one, one of the biggest problems I had is that the flow is coming out of 2 holes right here, and it just had the little duckbill thing that just literally pushed it right at the glass, right? Which would be great for a reef, for sure. But for seahorses, you want more flow all around, soft spots, weak spots, heavy spots, whatever. And so I did add the lock line. And what I was going to say is, instead of a power head, that's probably too much for this little area that's in front of this big gallon. But I use those internal filters. Not only can I fill it with Aquachar, who is a sponsor of this channel, thank you, Aquachar, and carbon, but I can point it straight down, like almost straight down, to where it's literally brushing the bottom of the tank and not really, just helping with turnover and all that. So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask my last question because I know Dan and Ray are going to leave us soon. I guarantee it. Poor Ray, we've been neglecting him tonight. But my last question, I've asked the usual comers to the channel before, but I've talked with Chris Carey on the side quite a bit about these damn copepods in my tank. All right, copepods are usually an excellent thing. What most people don't know is at least my seahorses will not eat them.
No, they're not going to. They're too
Dan, are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay. So anyways, what Cheryl, Ray, and Holly helped me figure out is that we think that these copepods entered my tank because I have a tank that was completely everything bleached and recycled, and the rock was recycled and bleached. I'm mumbling. Okay. So anyways, we figured out that we think that these copepods entered my tank via Artemia. Okay, because I bought live adult Artemia at one point from a store that I just shouldn't have bought live adult Artemia from. And I did clean them and all of that, but that's the only way I can think of that they entered. Anyways, the population has flippin' exploded. It's so bad that's what I didn't want to confuse issues earlier, but that's what I think is making the seahorse jerk. I've literally seen these seahorses. There are 3 seahorses in that tank. And I've seen all 3 of them scratch, not their gills, not like ciliates. I mean, it could still be, I guess, but I just don't think so because I'm doing so much maintenance. But they scratch their sides. And then as I was watching the seahorses do their dancing and courting and getting pregnant, I started looking and I started seeing this male had these stupid damn copepods, these little white bugs on him, not all over, not like attacking him, but they were crawling on him. And one was on his pouch. And I was like, maybe that's why he's jerking and flushing so much. Maybe they crawled into his pouch. Is that possible?
Possible, yes. And it also depends upon what type of copepods you have, whether it's calanoid or pacticoids, however you pronounce it. Some copepods are more clingy than others, and they could be a source as an external irritant.
Yeah.
There's 2 ways you can approach this. The first one is to put an organism in there that eats copepods.
Right.
The second one is to chemically treat it.
Formalin?
No.
No.
Formalin might knock them back a little bit, but I would probably do Panicure and see if that works.
Yeah.
Okay, but and that wait. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
How big are these copepods, first of all?
Well, I did show you guys in the Wine Wednesday chat, but I don't know how I could possibly show you right now, but they're tiny. Like that's literally why I wasn't even sure they were copepods, because in my reef or in my other seahorse tanks, copepods are usually you can tell they're copepods. You can see their little legs. These things are tiny little white things that are just specks.
Are you sure they're not flat? Are they flatworms?
I really don't. I'll show you another picture when we're done, and I'll try to post one.
Okay.
But I really don't think so, because they jump, they swim, they move. They're benthic for sure. Chris helped me figure that out, because they're on solid surfaces. They're not swimming through the water, but they can. Like they can. And if they are flatworms, Cheryl, you can tell me, and I'll let you guys know next week if she does diagnose that. But Chris is pretty sure they're pods. He has mentioned that there are some parasitical pods, not to scare everybody else out there. This is just my
But
fear.
usually their parasitic pods are generally much larger. I don't think these are parasitic, but they can still be an irritant. And, the problem with copepods in a seahorse tank Some seahorses will ignore them completely, as you've seen. Some seahorses will start feeding on them and stop eating frozen food. That's
Right.
why I don't recommend, trying to augment with copepods.
Yeah.
You know, the to me the best solution would be to find something that will eat them and that's compatible with the seahorses and put
My
that in the
Mandarin
tank.
Dragonette would love to join your seahorses. She
I'm
needs some
thinking about
of
that.
those.
I'm thinking about that because Chris said, well, if you really feel like the seahorses are irritated because like one of the girls in the tank got like her snout got dark, which made me just, is that a celiac sign or is that just showing she's stressed or it could be anything, right? So I just feel like these copepods are, bottom line is I feel like they're stressing them. There isn't anything in there to eat them. And no matter how much water changes, scrubbing, everything I do, they're just multiplying like crazy. They're
Some of
everywhere.
it sounds like tiger pods because they reproduce.
No. I know tiger
They're not
pods.
tiger
I
pods.
know these are tiny. I'll show you afterwards, Cheryl, and I'll try to post a picture, but they're tiny. And they're just a pain in the butt. And literally even like I literally thought that's why these seahorses don't want to be on the ground. And I never really understood why. Whatever, they just don't like the ground. They'd rather be hitched. That's fine. But now I think it's because these damn bugs are everywhere, and they won't eat food off the ground. And even the rings, I copied Heather's shower curtain rings thing, and they love it. They absolutely love it. So maybe they just love that. But I can see little pods on the damn rings. They're just freaking everywhere. It's driving me
Get a
crazy.
Mandarin Dragonette.
So
Or
I'm thinking,
two.
'cause Chris said you could
Borrow
freshwater
one.
dip the seahorses if it's stressing them. And I was like, right, but what about the tank? What do I
Then
do
they'll
then?
come back.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is you can dip the seahorses, but it's going to be in a matter of very short period of time.
Seconds.
You're going to be right back to ground
Yeah,
zero.
exactly.
And he said that too. But so
That's
Dan,
why I didn't do mine.
final question on that one. If I did try Panicure, did I say it wrong? Panicure? However you
Well,
say it.
as I'm thinking about this, the problem is for these to survive in the tank, they can't be obligate herbivores. So they have to be omnivores or carnivores, and they're most likely omnivores. And Panicure is not as effective on those.
Yeah.
So it's probably not the best choice. If you could identify that they are in fact
He told me get a microscope. Right, go ahead.
well, you don't even have to have that. I mean, if you could get a little sampling, and even with the iPhone, if you put it on something stable and hit the magnifier on it, you can probably get a big enough picture to not identify what species, but identify for the fact that they are copepods, not flatworms. Then if we know that they are in fact copepods, then it's a matter of putting something in the tank that'll eat them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put this post on Seahorse Sources group after we are done being live tonight, so you guys can help me ID and tell me what to do. I know that's right, Dan. I never mix fish with seahorses. I know Holly does it successfully. Everybody else does it. Just scares the poop out of me. So I'll obviously have to quarantine that too. And I mean, I'd love to get a Mandarin, but anyways. That's
I'm
what
wondering, what these pods, when you see them, do they have like sacs on either the larger ones? Okay,
you can't
so they're
see.
not a Panamancis.
No. I wasn't saying no. I'm saying you can't.
They're too tiny.
They're so tiny. That's why maybe they're not pods. I'll show you guys when we're done. And sorry, audience, I'll make sure you know the outcome next week. I promise. Or go to Seahorse Sources group on Facebook and see the post.
I've cultured several different species of copepods, and the newborns are very, very tiny and look like a little speck of dust. However, for what you're describing, there have to be adults in there. And depending on if you can get a picture, find one of the adults and get a picture of it, we could probably ID it for you. Because there's differences between Cyclops and different species of pods that are very characteristic.
Okay, I'm going to get you guys pictures no matter what it takes. It'll be in Seahorse Sources group. I'll report back on Wednesday next week. Final question, though, focused at all of you, but mainly Dan. You already said, yeah, they could go in his pouch. So he is now pregnant. They finally did their egg exchange.
Dan's pregnant?
No, I hope not. But this male is now pregnant. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So male seahorse. So my question is, I can't do anything if I want him to be able to keep the babies. I can't do anything in the meantime. You can't freshwater dip a pregnant seahorse, right?
Yeah, you can.
You can?
Mhm.
Okay, well, if it comes to
Now,
that,
if I have a choice and don't have to, I won't. But I've
yeah.
done it. Yes.
Have you ever seen a male release the
No.
babes?
No.
Okay, good.
But it is stressful to the animal.
Right.
I would prefer to do formalin over a freshwater dip in that setting. But
But you don't think formalin will work on pods?
Well, and since they're in the tank, though, Kelly, if you freshwater dipped him, he'd just get them again. So
Right. No, I know. I get it.
unless
I
you got
literally,
rid
Dan,
of them.
you weren't here, but when I first was asking, I was like, could these be visible ciliates or something? Because obviously I don't know this shit, but it's just driving me nuts. So
You
I'll show
wouldn't
you guys.
see them.
You can see them, so they're not ciliates, right? And so yeah, I'll just ask you guys, but yeah, I feel like, and I don't feel like I can add anything at least while he's pregnant because I want to get my seahorse population in this home back up. So just
Did
in the
you
meantime,
add
would you
macros to this tank?
no macros? Well, there's a actually there's an odd, very odd, you can barely see it, hair-like. And when I say hair-like, I don't mean little hairs on a rock. I mean, I literally thought my hair was in the tank. Strings of algae that are growing. So there's these weird, it's not everywhere, but there's just these weird hairs everywhere. And
filamentous algae.
what?
Filamentous algae.
Right.
Mhm.
And so that's the only algae in the tank, though. It's nuisance algae.
Well,
And I think
if
it's
they're
a lot.
pods, they had to come in somewhere from
I think
somewhere.
they came in on the food. I think they came in on the Artemia, in the water, whatever.
Usually, contamination like that oftentimes comes in either on macro or which you haven't added.
I will show you a picture. There is literally rock and shower curtains, shower curtain rings.
Shower
That's
curtains.
it. I mean, that's the only. I literally had plastic pieces in there, and I realized that they were probably not saltwater suitable because they started getting funky. So all that's in there right now is rock.
Well, I wish I could send you my Mandarin because she could
I
use some
know.
copepods.
Right, and I would trust your
Thinking
Mandarin
about
because
buying her some more.
he already lived with Aphrodite, right? I wish I could collect them. But so yeah, the final thing is, in the meantime, basically just do the biggest water changes I can and make sure to get the walls and the bottom when I do it, right? I mean,
Yeah, I would seriously,
or should I move the male?
I we need to ID what's there. That's
I
what
got
needs to happen. Then we
Okay.
can determine what to do.
Okay.
And the thing is, if you can get, do you have a macro lens where you can get a clear picture of one of them?
I spent like $500 on a microscope that I now can't find. So I'm going to try Dan's iPhone trick, or I'm going to have to get another one. Like the seahorses are still eating. Obviously, they
Because
bred. I don't think it's like killing them. I just think it's irritating them. I really feel like they're irritated.
First of all, it's very unusual to have a massive pod
Explosion, right?
explosion, particularly with seahorses. It's also, they had to come in on something. They probably did not come in on anything that was non-living ahead of time.
Right.
And there has to be some form of cross-contamination that has gone on.
One final question, and don't say that word in my presence, Cheryl. I don't do cross-contamination. No, I'm just kidding. But one final question
We all
is,
do.
I do know I did cross-contaminate. Now I'm going to backtrack because this rock was from the Barbori tank that never had copepods or anything. I did bleach it all and recycle it before it was added to this all-in-one. But I'm pretty darn sure that one piece of rock that had dried out, been sitting for years, and it dry. I don't think I bleached one of the pieces because I needed a piece to complete this artscape, aquascape, and I think I was just like, screw it, it's one piece. They couldn't come from a dry piece of rock, right?
No, but the eggs could
Yeah, they
have.
could.
Oh,
Right. If a lot of these organisms, their eggs are like cysts. Think of like Artemia cysts, and bleach, normal strength of bleach that we use to clean doesn't always kill encysted organisms.
Oh,
That's
great.
that's why you'll sometimes, when I'm doing a quick turnaround, I'll use an acid because the acid will eat the shell of any encysted organisms.
Actually,
Um,
Salty Reef joined us last week, and he talked all about the acid and all of that.
Yep.
Talking
But the
about
bleach,
curing it.
if you use straight bleach, if you're using straight bleach and scrubbing the tank without water in it, that sometimes is strong enough, particularly if you're using 10%. But it's entirely possible to have encysted organisms go dormant for a long period of time. I mean, we see it with Artemia cyst. It can happen with other encysted organisms too.
Well, I was reading an article. I don't remember where I found it, but they were talking about finding copepod that had been deceased for over 100 years, and actually moving some of the rock and having new ones hatch out.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, and Reef Nutrition is a great friend to the Seahorse Whisperer channel. We love him, and all of if I had a tank that I wanted copepods in, copepods are good. We're not saying they're bad. Just in this case, I don't want them, and I probably added them because I was not careful enough in my bleaching process. Grr is all I have to say about that one. But okay, so in the meantime, yeah, the Ray, you have to go. I
Yeah,
understand. I'm sorry.
gotta get where I'm laying back on that lazy boy. The pain just gets too high when I'm sitting in this chair for a long time.
No, I hear you. Was there anything else you wanted to share or
Ray,
No, I
comments?
only got one pair of seahorses, and there's only that one problem with the pinched situation with it. So I don't have much to really share with people.
That's not true. We appreciate you coming every week and all of your advice, and you answer questions. And even if someday you don't have those seahorses, we hope you come and share. But
Well,
I understand you
Good
gotta go.
seeing you again, Ray.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too, Dan. I miss you.
hey Ray, you stay warm where you're at.
Yeah, that's something new. Um, I usually keep my house fairly cool all the time. We had one night we were talking about that recently too. I found in the last few weeks, I get the chills and I have to crank it up to 23 as far as centigrade goes. Normally, I'd be sitting more in the 18 to 20 range, and 20 is 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
So I think this 78 years old is starting to have some effect on me.
Heating
Well,
pad.
I'm just a shy tad over 40, and I'm like, nah. I want my robe. It's got to be warm. I can't do it. Forget winter. Go ahead. Sorry.
Maybe a heating pad you might find helpful, Ray.
Yeah.
Well, I used to try heating pads for the pain in that, but it doesn't work. What will work is if I stand in the shower with hot water.
Oh, yeah.
Love
But
that.
dry heat just does not do a damn thing.
No, I meant in terms of warming you up.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Or electric blanket or something.
oh, I couldn't stand that.
So you're not doing the whole house, just you.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say I'm such an old
Well,
lady.
it's
I'm like,
easier too. Like I just go up, push it up a few degrees, and then it comes up, and the chill goes away, and then I push it, let it go back down again. It doesn't take long to go back down now that we're into the cold stuff.
Yep.
right.
Mhm.
Okay, well, you have a fantastic. I'm getting ready to call it anyways. I promised Dan we'd be done before 10. So I'm going to allow any last questions. But Ray, thank you for coming. And
Okay, good night, all. It's good to see
Good
everybody.
night, Ray.
Hey, Ray.
okay, guys, I'm going to shut up about my little white bugs. And that sounds so terrible. There's going to be a meme tomorrow. She has white bugs. No, but any other questions, comments, thoughts? I didn't see any questions in the chat tonight. which is fine.
I have another quick one that just occurred to me because I'm sometimes like in my hospital tank since I get through that. They actually made it through a lot of days before any ammonia traces showed up. But I did a 100% water change the other day and started fresh medication because I was detecting ammonia. But I wanted to know if Prime has any effect on the medication if you have to use it to fight ammonia in a hospital tank.
That's a good question.
I don't know for sure that it does or does not. Now, having said that, I can tell you that many people have used both that and MQuel Plus during treatment successfully without any obvious adverse effects.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't hit I've topped out at 0.25 and just done a water change. So I'm changing water every day anyway, but
If it's
I
a
was
trace, I'm not
thinking
going to
if
be
I
too
don't have
concerned.
time, if I have to work all day and I can't be there to do a water change, if I added a little Prime, would it hurt
Yeah,
anything?
if it's just a trace, I'm not usually not too concerned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where
What
did
what point do
Kelly
you
go?
feel is dangerous for them in that situation? Like what should I stay below
I would
ammonia?
definitely stay below 0.5, but if I'm only, it depends upon your test kit too. But if I'm showing where it's questionable whether there is or there isn't, I'm not too concerned. If
Mm-hmm.
it's very clear with the test kit that I'm getting ammonia,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to do the water
Treating.
change
Yeah.
and bring it
Yeah, I
down.
use the API, and if I'm at 0.25, that's usually where I do the
Man,
water
if
change.
I get 0.25, I go grab the bottle of bleach and bleach it, then chlorinate it, and then buffer it and start all over again.
Well, I
I'm,
found
I'm
with
on
that
TV.
test kit, when you're at 0.25, if I do the 50% water change, which I'm doing anyway, and it's going to take it to where it's barely detectable, pretty much zero, just above zero. If I do, like, of course, change all the water, I'm starting fresh and then I don't detect ammonia again for a few more days. But I mean, it's a 10-gallon tank. It's not that big a deal to change out the water,
Exactly.
but it
Yeah,
is a labor intensive thing. So if I have a day where I can't do it till I come home from work, if I leave it at 0.25 and then change it later, I shouldn't have to worry, sounds like.
Hey,
Well, if
Kelly.
anybody in the comment section, definitely let us know your thoughts. I just realized that my chat wasn't working the way I thought. So, guys, finish up whatever you want to say because I want to read from the chat and then we'll close it out.
Okay, Kelly, I want to show you a picture. I want to do a
Okay.
share a screen.
Go ahead.
Okay, hang on. Share screen. Why can't I do share screen?
You should be able to.
Oh, okay. That was not what I wanted.
Well, it won't go live until I make it live. So share whatever you want, and then you can tell me if it's right. And while you're looking, I'm going to go ahead and read some of this stuff, just
Okay.
because I'm sorry, you guys in the audience, that I was missing it. Hey, Chimp, really glad you came. Sorry I didn't announce you. And Seahorse Corner, her fry are doing great, and she hasn't lost any. She's working on training them to frozen. They're between 4 and 6 weeks. And she said the younger ones are doing better than the older ones with frozen. Interesting. I've never had that happen. So you got to join us in a future week and chat about it. Salty Reef said, I'm currently working on a 3D printed cover for the Jabeo PP8 wave makers that are seahorse safe, but don't collect algae.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one. I saw that too.
Yes, Holly, if you see something and I don't, announce it because that will be amazing. And Seahorse Corner said, I was told there is a breeding season, but I thought it should be over now. I guess they missed the memo. Right.
Mine
And
too.
you know what? Seahorse Corner mentioned her peppermint shrimp are breeding like crazy. I loved that in my seahorse tank previously.
Kelly, can I bug you
Yeah,
for a
give me
minute?
1 second. Give me 1 second, Cheryl. When
Okay.
when peppermint shrimp start breeding, that's like snacks for seahorses. I love it. Okay, I'll come back to the comments. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Can you see the picture I'm sharing?
Now we can.
Okay,
Yeah.
those are Cyclops Panamancis. You see, the females have basically bags on either side of the bodies. That's
Yep.
where they carry the fry. And the males basically don't have that. Now, these at maturity are about 500 to 600 microns, fully grown. The newborns, if you can look at some of these little bitty guys, and those are half growns. When they're firstborn, they look like specks of dust.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm dealing with. I don't know if it's the same thing. I'm going to get you a picture, but this is a great photo to help us figure that out because I would say mine look like the tiny specks of dust.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you look at this, there's little white spots.
Yep.
Those are the newborns,
That's
and and that's why I'm bringing this up is to give you an idea of what to look for. Uh, I personally love this pod, but I'm going to stop sharing now. But
well, no,
I'm
and I love pods too. I just do apocyclops crawl on seahorses. Like I just don't remember ever seeing that. I can see them on the seahorses.
Wow.
Not a lot,
So
but
are you seeing different sizes then?
Any benthic organism can do it.
yeah. The
and what
thing
was
is,
the question, Holly?
I said, so can you tell they're different sizes? The ones that you have, so you're knowing that they're babies and adults, and the
No.
ones you're
In my
seeing are
tank,
they
no.
all the same size?
They all look small. I mean, I'm gonna feel really stupid if they're flatworms, but I've never seen flatworms this small.
are you sure
But
these aren't rotifers?
Cheryl, I didn't add them. I have no
She
idea.
doesn't know. Yeah.
I'm gonna count on you to you guys to look for the post in Seahorse Sources group after this to tell me because I don't know. I'm not very good with the little teeny tiny critters. It might be rotifers.
I
Do
wouldn't
rotifers
be
crawl on seahorses? As Dan said, anything bent that can.
And
So it's
seahorses
just
don't
so
really.
bad. It's
Yeah,
the population.
seahorses don't like rotifers.
What?
Seahorses don't like rotifers.
Well, maybe that's it.
Maybe.
And we will let you know next week for sure. Let me get through the comments real quick.
Okay.
Do you guys think there's a breeding season or why are seahorses breeding nonstop year round? She's
Well,
like,
mine do the same thing, but I think was it you guys were saying though that when they're younger, I think Cheryl said this, the younger ones that aren't experienced start in the off season because that way they get their chance because the older, more mature ones with the experience are slowing down. Isn't that what you were saying, Cheryl, about the younger
Well,
one?
basically, what happens is like with erectus, they typically start cycling into breeding condition February, March, and it seems their peak tends to go through November. Then the adults go through a quiescent phase, and this may very well be prime time for the new youngsters to try out their because the large dominant males are not going to be chasing the other males, and the females are not going to be getting bullied by the big males to keep away. I don't know, Dan, what's your thought on that?
As far as breeding season,
Yeah,
I found that in the captive environment, it varies greatly from person to person. And I think a lot of it has to do with our artificial setups and to what the seahorses think is what. You know, I've seen some erectus that were steady consistently. I've seen some that were very sporadic. In the wild, supposedly, the early part of spring and the late part of summer, early part of fall, they typically do, at
yeah,
least down in the southern waters. In northern waters, I suspect it's, a little bit of a shorter season. Thus, the reason they reach sexual maturity faster. But I think a whole lot of it has to do with the cycles that we set up with lighting and temperature and what have you.
and I was gonna say my seahorses that my male pregnant seahorse now, I didn't realize it, but when I started thinking it through, it was the day that we turned our heater on, our central air heater for the house, instead of air conditioning on, that they started spinning and dancing. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it's temperature related. I know that breeders like Dan and Alyssa have great secrets about how to get them going. And I did also have my purple male. If you guys have followed me for a while, my big, beautiful purple male that unfortunately is no longer with me. He would be like 50 years old at this point. Kidding, but he bred year round. Didn't matter. He'd find a girl. He had some babies. Period. So who knows?
Now, what I found is a lot of they'll go through when they start going through a prolonged breeding period and having multiple broods back to back. There comes a point that male is going to say, "No way, Jose." He's not going to inflate his pouch. He's going to back off. He's going to take a break. The female still may be soliciting from him. I've seen that happen, but eventually the males do say, "Enough. I need a break." And
On that species.
Depends on species. Absolutely. We got to talk species in the future, but if we start that conversation now, I'll never cut it by 10, which is in 3 minutes. So, Dan, real quick, you're helping Dylan, who is a favorite of the show. He comes all the time. We love you, Dylan. We're crossing fingers for your move. Anything that needs to be shared, or are you just helping him on the side about moving?
I'm sorry. Well, he was asking a question about moving them, and my thoughts are a bucket is fine, and I've used a bucket many times to move seahorses, but if I'm traveling in a vehicle or something like that, I do prefer a bag because I don't have to worry about it spilling. I don't have to worry about if I hit the brakes or anything else. To me, it's a more secure way of moving them. If I have the bags available, the distance will come into play, and if it's a distance, even more so with the bags.
Well, Dan, I forget her name now. She's the one that moved up to Seattle on the org and set up the 40-gallon dwarf tank and grew out pods. I forget her name. She was a half mile from her new home. She'd driven all the way from, I want to say, Oklahoma or something like that, all the way to Seattle. She was a half mile. She was pulling off the highway. Somebody cut her off. She slammed on her brakes, and she ended up with her buckets of seahorses all over her car.
Oh, how terrible. Well, the big argument for buckets with seahorses is that you can use battery powered airlines to give them more air during. But Dan, I think you're saying that if you're using a bag and you've added oxygen or done it right to make sure there's oxygen in there, they're cool.
Yep, they can go 24, 48 hours easily in a bag.
Okay. I think we talked about this a previous week, and I said that exact thing that Cheryl was just talking about. I could see myself slamming on the brakes and losing everything in a bucket. So,
well, the trick I used to do with the buckets, with buckets in the boat was when I was collecting, plankton and stuff like that, is I would take a salt bucket, which is taller, and then and the lid screws on, and then I would drill a 1 or 2 inch size hole in the very center of the lid, and then put the airline in through that. That way, if I hit the brakes or hit a wave in the case of the boat and water was sloshing around, very little got sloshed out of the bucket, if any.
There you go. That's the answer. Okay, final question, and I'm cutting it off. It's 10 now. But Salty Reef asked, Salty is in the process of setting up a business, so stay tuned to learn more about that. He's also having a baby on Monday, so lots going on there. But his question was, Dan, what do you think about the rising prices of seahorses?
The problem is for me to answer that question is I'm 3 years removed from the market in terms of dealing with the market. So, in all fairness, I'm probably not fully in tune at the moment with what's going on the market. I do know that when I was involved in the market, unfortunately, most aquarium hobbyists are cheapskates. And when I say that, part of it's out of necessity. It's an expensive hobby. And, it's very difficult for the brick and mortars because they're having to compete with the online, and, brick and mortars got a higher overhead. I don't know what the going rate is for most of the species at the moment of what's available. And, I do know that it was very tough when Abby and I were operating the business, because we operated from home and because it was just us and so much of it was tax deductible the way we were doing it. On paper, with our write-offs, we really weren't making a living. Realistically, we were, but it was, so much of it was being written off. And if I'd have had to have hired anybody and paid a salary, I could not have done it.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Um,
and I mean, Alyssa's figured out diversify, and Salty is going to diversify. He's going to offer clean macros and other fish and etc. Which is difficult because having cross contamination issues, whatever. But I will say that we miss Dan at Seahorse Source being available because his seahorses were cheap, y'all. I mean, I'm telling you, you could get them reasonably priced, and they were good seahorses. So we need more breeders to go commercial, because I personally think that if there's no competition, that companies can charge whatever they want. Of course,
Well,
they're going to give
that's the
sales
point.
to get rid of things, overstocking. But yeah, we need. Sorry.
There is a point in which it's a matter of market demand and availability, and there's a point to which price gets high enough that people will buy something else instead.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a toughie. And it's if the market is saturated with seahorses, the prices, of course, are going to naturally come down because of competition. But if there's not a lot of competition, they can go up to a point as long as people are buying. But it's something that especially if you're doing it online, you just have to play with to find out what's going to work price wise. And a look at the competition will give you a good idea. People buy from different places for different reasons, and sometimes price is the deciding factor. Sometimes it's who's selling it is a deciding factor. Reputation comes into play. Location comes into play sometimes. It's the hard part for me was the shipping issue, because the shipping costs were so bloody high. And FedEx and UPS both are going to be raising their prices after the first of the year again. And the fuel surcharges are going to be coming into play with the gas prices going up. And it's, unless you're a high volume shipper, and most seahorse breeders are not, it's very, very tough. I used to lose $10 to $15 per order on shipping.
I remember that.
I had flat rate shipping, and I had to, because everybody else was offering the cheap shipping, and it's kind of sad when you've got big vendors that get an 80% discount, and then you got the little guy that's getting a 20 or 50 to 50% discount. That doesn't sound like much, but to give you an idea, my first seahorse that I shipped from Florida to I think it was Utah, and the cost in a 10 by 10 by 10 box
It was more than the seahorse, I bet.
No, it was $40 for FedEx overnight with a 10% discount. Okay.
And now
when I stopped in 2018, that same shipment would have cost me almost $100 my cost to do.
That's insane. And all I can say, though, Salty Reef, is that this channel will definitely support you. I did see Aquachar came to tonight. Hello. Sorry, I didn't shout you out. Didn't see it. But yeah, Salty will support you. And I'm saying, like, if I decided to go back into breeding, which I was never a commercial breeder, I was just hobbyist. But if I did, I'd be like, go a little bit lower than everybody else. You're going to make all these sales. That's my motto.
Well,
yeah, I ran into that. The shipping is so expensive. Yeah, it's super expensive. And see, where I live, there isn't a demand for seahorses.
Right.
So the stores here, which are still far away from me, they sell them for $30.
Right.
Stores here sell them for $90. Literally.
Yeah. My store sell them for $92, Cheryl. And the thing is, I have people contact Seahorse Whisperer on Facebook, YouTube, everywhere daily, asking me where to get Cuda, Barbori, all these species because all you can find anymore is Erectus, Reed-eye. They're just nowhere, unless you want to go to Ocean Rider and pay big bucks. But they do have specials often now. So.
Well, the thing is, CITES is really, there's a lot going on with CITES right now. And we don't have access to the net pen raised or wild caught that we used to have, 10, 15 years ago. and that's definitely put a crimp in being able to get.
Yeah, but we don't want to have access to them. Maybe the breeders, but not.
Yeah,
to
from a
the
breeder
pups.
perspective, I would love to get access to some of these. It's like right now, Hawaii banned the export of indigenous fish. And so now, Hylotus, which I know, Dan, you used to work with, uh, you can't get them out of Hawaii anymore.
You can, just not legally.
Well,
Right. We're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. But, and I'm
I
just
just
saying,
one
you know,
peace officer.
the main thing we promote on the show is captive bred seahorses.
Yeah.
So yes, the high class, or not high class, the good breeders, the commercial breeders like Cheryl, Dan, Alyssa, all the, you know, you guys need to be able to get in the brood stock to captive breed seahorses for us. But I am glad that there are restrictions where every Joe Schmo can't get, you know, some exotic species that they're not going to be able to keep and care for. So it's a fine line. I don't know. Anyway,
Well, it increases the cost
before we start
drastically from the
arguing,
breeder. You know,
what Dan?
it increases the cost drastically for the breeder to invest. You know, when you look at bringing in brood stock, and if you got to spend, you know, more than a couple of grand to bring in something,
Right.
and then turn around and try to make a profit where you're making, you know, just a couple of bucks a seahorse, it's a tough go, you know.
Right.
And most
That-
breeding programs that I've done in the past, when I brought a new species in, it took a year or so to get it off the ground properly.
Sure.
So it's a tremendous investment on a business that really doesn't make big money if that's all you're doing.
Well, I
I
think
also wanted to
before-
tell Salty,
Yeah.
Salty, if you don't have my phone number, I think it's on my Facebook
Or I can give it to you. He's got my
Facebook
number.
page, or get Kelly. She'll give you my number. It's usually best to reach me after 8 p.m. And usually I can talk at that point. And I'm usually up till about 11 or 12.
Holy
doesn't wake
cow,
up
you
before
guys!
7
Salty Reef's gonna hook up with Dan. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have a new breeder. Yeah. Okay.
Dan,
Listen,
one
Cheryl,
thing.
say your final. We gotta cut it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
One things I've seen over the years is I don't remember exactly how much you were selling your seahorses for back in 2005, but I think it was only around like $30 or something like that a piece. And now, if you go to one of the commercial breeders now, you're going to pay at least $30 a piece plus shipping for them. So there's been a huge increase in the price.
Yeah.
But there's also been a dramatic increase in the number of people that are wanting to keep them.
That's because of Wine Wednesday, duh. Because we talk about seahorses and
it's
how
just,
cool they are.
yeah.
No, but really, and I do want to say too, I do tell every person that asks me about Puda and Redi and da 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 da. It's Erectus are amazing. My favorite species is Barbori, but I wouldn't wish them on anyone else because they're so picky. You know, Erectus are easy. They're so easy to care for. If you want to keep seahorses and be cool, come to Wine Wednesday. Go to Seahorse Sources group on Facebook. Learn how to design the tank based on Cheryl and Dan's recommendations to keep their color or whatever, or just love the dang seahorses because they're amazing. But we do need new breeders. All right, last up.
You seen the pictures of the little orange baby that Alicia sent me?
Yep.
Oh, she looks like an orange and white tiger tail on her tail.
But Cheryl, we need your butt to start selling these combs in these orange and yellows, darn it. Quit holding them back. Okay, guys, listen, we could talk all night. We could every week. But we're going to have to cut it. We've been going 2 hours. I know Dan's got a busy day. So I'm going to let them say bye and happy Wine Wednesday, but we will be back next week. We do this every week. We'll try to figure out Instagram and make the picture more clear, but let us know what you think if you want to see it on Instagram, and we'll be back next week. Everybody say bye.
No, wait one
Bye.
second. Dan, you need to set up a tank.
Bye.
Cheryl, leave us alone. Goodbye. Okay, I'm saying, look, the mason jar is empty. No good. All right.
Well, there's still
everybody
liquid
say
in there.
bye. Happy Wine Wednesday, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.